You're listening to The Lead on News 24 with your host, broadcast journalist Graeme Rauby.
Coronationville, Westbury and Melville, while these are among the Johannesburg suburbs still suffering from a perpetual water crisis. Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi has promised residents that long-term solutions are on the way. But Metro journalist Alex Patrick tells us that in the meantime, many infuriated locals are struggling to survive.
It's still the same system. That's your Commando system, your Midrand system and your Soweto system. That's obviously Soweto, Coronationville, Westbury, Melville, Midrand, Mayfair, and all of those areas kind of in the central, south and western areas of Johannesburg. Those traditionally do not have water and still do not have water.
In our trending topic for today, a fire at Cape Town International Airport delays global flights. And finally, a journalist of colour was sentenced to prison time for conspiring to break the Apartheid Immorality Act on this day in South African history. Our regular segment heard later.
To know when the next episode drops, hit the like, follow and subscribe buttons on our YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcast channels.
In Rauby's Pointless Braai quiz, our question for today is, who's the famous US broadcast journalist who investigated South Africa's farm murders for CBS's 60 Minutes segment aired just recently? Well, I'll give you the answer at the end of the show. My name's Graeme Rauby, this is The Lead, and this is the South African story. Moving to our top story today, well, she's been the reporting voice of reason amidst the high tensions of this perpetual water crisis in Johannesburg. Well, she's our very own Metro journalist. That's Alex Patrick. How's it, Alex? Welcome back to The Lead.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I really do appreciate it. Look, the last time we spoke at the 11th hour of publishing The Lead in our previous update of this water crisis, we heard that the utility Johannesburg Water's staff had suddenly called off their strike. It's understood, if you recall, they were sort of striking at the time over the non-payment of bonuses. And then, this being the State of the Nation address with the president, there's this announcement of a new water crisis task team or a committee. And then we heard from the Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi at the State of the Province address in Gauteng just this Monday that there are various measures in place from his administration to try and slow down this crisis and stabilize it across the province. But if we look a lot closer at Joburg, have things really stabilized?
No, they have not. Perhaps in areas that are not used to having water outages, those areas would have stabilized. But it's still the same system. That's your Commando system, your Midrand system, and your Soweto system. That's obviously Soweto, Coronationville, Westbury, Melville, Midrand, Mayfair, and all of those areas kind of in the central, south and western areas of Johannesburg. Those traditionally do not have water and still do not have water.
Right. And, in that prior sort of update that we'd given regarding the strike, you and I also spoke quite extensively about the root causes of the crisis. We spoke about the Midrand water outage. We spoke about the water plant explosion. We spoke about the inlet sort of breaking down, and all of these things sort of manifested together, right, to create a bit of a perfect storm in Joburg. But one of the main sort of parts or pieces of the puzzle here has been this Commando water system in central Joburg. Just try and explain this again for us, Alex. Why is this such still a critical implement within the overall water infrastructure system of Johannesburg? And what is it?
It's a good question. And a lot of people just hear Commando. They don't know what that really is. So going back to the explosion on the 27th of January, what that did was stop pumping at Rand Water. So Rand Water is Johannesburg's only source of water. And one of the pump stations was the Ikenhof pump station. Ikenhof supplies 2/3 of Johannesburg with water. So when that pump station stops, it's a major issue. For every 1 second that pump station is down, it takes 4 hours to recover. That's because it's got to recover the whole system. So first of all, your Commando system is Johannesburg's water system, that supplies the inner city. The issue with that as well is that our inner city is, in terms of topography, it's very tall. It's like the highest lying parts of the city. And we rely on gravity instead of pumps to get water into our taps. So if there's any issue with water coming into the reservoir of the Commando, so that's the Crosby Reservoir, then there's going to be a low water system. So then there's lower pressure, meaning that that water is unable to travel uphill into these parts of Johannesburg. Not only that, the system is so old and has not been upgraded. So there's, especially in the inner city, which is growing so fast, 10,000 people come to live in Johannesburg every month. So that's the growth that the city has. They're busy putting in your Brixton Tower and reservoir, but that was meant to be finished last year. So it's a combination of all these things. So it's a combination of the water not coming into the Commando system, and then the Commando system not having enough pressure because there's a low water supply.
Right. Thanks for explaining that. You and your colleague Yolanda, you spoke to some of the residents in Coronationville, Brixton and Melville. We know that Coronationville has been one of the hardest hit consecutively in more recent months. So we had the major outage of around more than a month. I think it was late last year, September. And then now again hardest hit. So I feel really sorry for the people living there. Let's start with your interview with Dolores Williams, this Coronationville resident. What did she tell you? And we're going to be playing clips on the back of everything that Alex relays to us. So we'll be playing a clip from Dolores and a clip from a resident in Brixton as well as a resident in Melville. But take us to Coronationville. Here's this senior citizen. She's trying her best to sort of navigate this water crisis, and she's constantly having to buy water.
So the biggest problem in Coronationville is that they rely on these water tankers for their water, and the tankers are not reliable themselves. So you never know what time the tankers are coming, how many tankers are coming, and a lot of the time they come during the day. So somebody like Dolores, who is a pensioner and stays at home, would be able to go and get her water. But if you're working or at school or whatever, you are not able to get water during the day. So that's the first issue there, is that it's unreliable when it comes, are you able to get the water? Dolores has 73. She's got arthritis in her hands. She doesn't have, a big bucket. She's got these, a whole range of 5-liter water buckets, which she's had to pay for herself because the residents are drinking the water that comes in these water tankers. Nobody really trusts that water. But she's, this issue has been so, it's been ongoing for so long that the tanker drivers are kind enough that they actually help her to carry her water inside. I mean, they've become friends. That's how long this has been going on for.
Right. Let's hear a quick clip from Dolores herself as part of the News 24 multimedia team's coverage. This was taken by our colleague Yolanda Mzeke. Let's have a listen.
Who do we ask? I'm asking you, help us. My one question to the mayor would be, you've been here before. My question is, why am I here again today? How long is this going to go on? How long do we have to ask the same questions time and time again?
Let's move on to Brixton resident Dale McKinley. Look, he is, in my mind's eye, one of those many more sort of well-off, a little bit more affluent Johannesburg inner city suburb residents around the Auckland Park, Brixton sort of side of things, and where they can afford to, sort of, for the lack of a better word, pivot to maybe getting a borehole system or something like that, although the costs are still extremely exorbitant. And, all of us as South Africans are cash-strapped these days, that we can't really make these huge cash purchases in the midst of these crises. Take us to the household of Mr. McKinley. What has he had to do to sort of get around the water crisis?
He's brought in a 1,000-litre JoJo tank that hooks up to his internal water system. So when there's water in Brixton, it pumps into that water tank. When there's no water, however, he has to pay to put potable water into his water tank. And that, he said, is costing between 75 cents a litre and R1.50 a litre. So it really is a big expense.
Yeah, let's have another listen to that clip with the interview with Dale McKinley.
The bottom line is this is unacceptable. It means what we've done is we've privatized water again, to where only those that can afford are going to be able to have that kind of backup.
In Melville, you guys have this interview with a local student there by the name of Siash Labani. I mean, having to use water from that household swimming pool just to fill up their JoJo tank and then to boil that water and use it again for the various human uses. I mean, this is what a day zero scenario could possibly look like. Obviously, in Joburg's case, there is enough water. It's just getting the water to the homes, which is a big problem.
Yeah. And, the experts are calling it a day zero because a month without water, and that's no water, that's no air coming out of the tap, that's just nothing, is what people like the student have to deal with every day. I mean, there's 9 of them in that household. There's an Airbnb long stay resident who kind of moved out for a little bit and yes, like you said, they're lucky enough to have a swimming pool, and that water is used for washing clothes, washing dishes, and a shower. But obviously you can't drink that water. And they have in the past had to buy water to fill their tanks. And I think that came to over 4,000 Rand because they've got 2 really large tanks, I think over 2,000 litres.
You go weeks without water, and the means to have water has to come out of your own pocket. And I think it just, for people, I don't think it's necessarily fair for people that don't have the financial means to hire a tanker or, go buy water, as majority of the people that live in the area are elderly as well as students.
Sure. Okay. So Lesufi, the Premier, last night gave his State of the Province address, Alex. He's promised the construction of this new ground reservoir and a tower in Brixton. And apparently this is all going online this Saturday. And there's this huge water infrastructure project that's in the works. I mean, do you sound convinced?
I would be convinced if this promise hadn't been promised for April last year. So this reservoir and tower has been in the works for far too long. The problem is they keep not paying their contractors, and there's been downing of tools. It did come back online 2 weeks ago, and it started pumping silt, basically. So they had to take it back offline. They had to drain all that water, which is millions of litres of water, clean it out and try again. So yes, I mean, once it does come online, it will supplement the commando system. But, we're still waiting for that, and it's been promises.
I thought this was also super interesting, Alex. Obviously, we know that the Premier is still, by the way, licking his political wounds, so to speak, after those quite insensitive, tone-deaf comments that, he can just go and shower in a hotel. I think he's never going to be able to live that down. It's, these are the types of faux pas that get printed on political T-shirts for years to come. And he claimed at his State of the Province address that parties, in inverted commas or in brackets, the Democratic Alliance, shouldn't be politicizing the waters crisis because he claims the ANC didn't do that during Cape Town's Day Zero scenario, which is absolute hogwash, if I can just say on this podcast, because I covered the water crisis quite extensively in 2016, 2017 here in the Western Cape and Cape Town. I was on the ground a lot, and the ANC in Western Cape was very, very vocal at the time. So we're in election silly season at the moment. I mean, he's cost himself major ANC votes when it comes to the municipals later this year, and you heard this from the residents you spoke to in these affected areas, didn't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously I was there when he made that faux pas, and I was there at the meeting the day after, which he was then not invited to. He doesn't actually understand what's happening on the ground. I mean, despite sitting there with the water minister and the deputy minister and the mayor, he said that the water issue in Johannesburg had nothing to do with the infrastructure and had nothing to do with the lack of water coming in. At the same meeting, we were told, no, actually, it does have to do with that. So,
in the meantime, we know some of the residents affected in these suburbs that still have constrained water supply. They're still holding pickets. I think there's been weekly pickets in Melville.
In fact, it's daily now. It's every afternoon. They're no longer stopping traffic, but they are making a big song and dance about it. It's every afternoon at about 5. And then today, Coronationville and Westbury held a huge protest. The same kind of stature that they held last year, where there was burning of tires. Eventually, police came in last year and kind of sprayed them with rubber bullets. They didn't do that this time because there was a class action suit. Yeah, I mean, people are absolutely angry. And that the reason is because the problem is not that we don't have water. The problem is that our infrastructure is broken because the money has been stolen. We do not have money to rebuild the infrastructure. We don't have the 27 billion needed to fix it. It's going to take 10 years to fix. I'm a resident myself, and really, we're very angry.
I feel like, although we're seeing these promises again of long-term implements, critical mass sort of water infrastructure upgrades, which the term itself often just goes over people's heads. But I feel like this is such a long-term problem that I feel like as if we're only just patching up with a couple of Band-Aids now what's required, and you're only sort of pushing the cart down the road because we're going to get back into the situation again.
That is the sentiment, but the thing is that it can be changed. We've reached out to the provincial government now. We're asking for money to build these resources. It can be fixed. It will take a long time. But if nothing is done now, then the infrastructure will collapse completely.
That's our Metro journalist, Alex Patrick, reporting from our Randburg studios. Thank you so much, Alex, and apologies to our lead listeners. We've had terrible internet connections on both our sides. It's been very, very trial and error for Alex and I to get this conversation going, but we wanted to bring it to you nonetheless. Alex, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And don't tell us where you live in Joburg. Everybody might come and rush there to escape the water crisis.
Thank you. Bye.
Trending topic.
In our trending topic for today, just a quick update from our News 24 desk. The fire that broke out near the international terminal of Cape Town Airport this Tuesday has since been put out. Staff and passengers, though, had to be evacuated and baggage reclaim was delayed for some time. Airports Company South Africa confirmed to News 24 that as a precaution, international departure flights had to be suspended for some time, whilst incoming landings were diverted for a short while, all while smoke filled the terminal building, as seen in viral videos doing the rounds online. Thankfully, though, no one was hurt, but Access says the fire did affect its Wi-Fi network and IT systems. The exact origin of the blaze remains unknown, but sources speculate it was electrical and occurred in one of the office wings of the international terminal landside. For pictures from the scene, check news24.com and, of course, subscribe.
And finally,
ending off now with On This Day in South African History. That's the 24th of February 1962. On this very day, 23-year-old journalist of colour Joseph Lowe was sentenced to 6 months in prison by the Joburg Regional Court for conspiring to breach the Immorality Act with a 19-year-old white woman known as Pamela Bearer. Now, at the time, apartheid laws criminalized sexual relationships between white South Africans and people of other races. The magistrate rejected a plea for a suspended sentence, saying the relationship was not a matter of sudden temptation, quote unquote, but a sustained connection. Bearer, meanwhile, failed to appear in court and reportedly fled South Africa. For Rauby's Pointless Braai quiz today, the question was, who's the famous US broadcast journalist who investigated South Africa's farm murders for CBS's 60 Minutes segment, aired very recently? Answer is none other than Anderson Cooper. In his report, farmers Cooper spoke to dismiss this false notion perpetuated by the US Trump administration that a white genocide has been happening locally. If this was your answer all along, congratulations. You scored the priceless prize of being the most informed person around the Braai place. My name's Graeme, and I'm in. So long as there's trusted news first, we'll always have the lead.